The 1967 United States quarter dollar, part of the Washington quarter series first introduced in 1932, represents one of the coins struck during a particularly important transitional era in American numismatic history, as it was minted only a short time after the United States removed silver from circulating dimes and quarters beginning in 1965. Because of this, the 1967 quarter is made not of silver, but of a clad composition consisting of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, producing the familiar modern copper sandwich appearance visible along the reeded edge. The obverse features George Washington, sculpted initially by John Flanagan, based on John Antoine Houdon's 1786 bust of Washington, chosen during the bicentennial celebrations of Washington's birth. Washington's left-facing portrait is accompanied by inscriptions that have appeared on U.S. coinage for decades. Liberty at the top, representing the nation's foundational ideal. In God We Trust to Washington's left. Officially adopted for coins during the Civil War era and reaffirmed in later legislation. And the date 1967 at the bottom. Because of special circumstances in U.S. minting policy at the time, no mint marks were used in 1965, 1966, or 1967, meaning every 1967 quarter, whether made in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, has no mint mark, a fact that occasionally confuses new collectors. The reverse still carried the traditional heraldic eagle design chosen in 1932, with the eagle perched confidently on a bundle of arrows, symbolizing national defense, while supporting olive branches beneath to signify peace. Above the eagle appears the motto E pluribus unum, meaning, out of many, one, a long-standing national motto emphasizing unity from diversity. The coin is 24.3 millimeters in diameter, weighs 5.67 grams, and has 119 reeds on its edge. Its clad composition was chosen to end the public hoarding that had stripped silver coins from circulation in the early 1960s, a result of rising silver prices that made coins worth more for their metal than their face value. To stabilize the situation, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, authorizing huge numbers of new clad coins and temporarily suspending mint marks to discourage collectors from pulling coins out of circulation. Thus, the 1967 quarter was struck in extremely large quantities, over 1.5 billion pieces, which today makes most circulated examples common and worth only face value. Though uncirculated pieces, especially those in exceptionally high grades, mint state 66 to 68, can attract collectors and achieve higher prices depending on luster, strike sharpness, and absence of contact marks. There are no official proof sets for 1967 because the U.S. Mint produced special mint sets, SMS, instead from 1965 to 1967. The 1967 SMS quarter, distinguishable by its sharper strike and satin-like finish, is of greater interest to collectors, especially cameo or deep cameo examples with strong frosted devices and mirrored fields. Over the years, no regular issue 1967 quarters were made with silver, though occasional privately altered pieces, plated in silver or gold, appear in circulation, often misleading beginners. Genuine silver errors are not known for this date. Some collectors look for minor die varieties such as die rotations, repunched hubs, or die cracks, but major valuable varieties for 1967 are scarce. Historically, the coin represents a moment when the nation was seeking economic stabilization and modernizing its coinage production while still honoring long-standing American iconography, national mottos, and the portrait of Washington created to commemorate his 200th birthday. Today, the 1967 quarter remains an everyday example of how political decisions, metal markets, technological changes, and national symbolism all converge into a small but historically rich object that continues to circulate and reminds us of the story of American currency in mid-20th century. And next top. The 1979 United States quarter dollar, part of the long-running Washington quarter series begun in 1932, represents a coin produced during a period of high-volume American minting, economic challenges, and the continued use of the copper-nickel clad composition introduced in 1965 when the United States removed silver from circulating quarters. Therefore, Like all regular issue quarters from 1965 onward, the 1979 D quarter consists of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, giving it a total weight of 5.67 grams, a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, and the familiar copper sandwich look visible along the reeded edge. The obverse displays the classic portrait of George Washington, designed by sculptor John Flanagan from Jean-Antoine Houdon's 1786 Life Mask of Washington, chosen originally for the 200th anniversary of Washington's birth. Above his head appears the bold inscription Liberty, symbolizing the nation's founding ideal, and to the left of Washington's neck is the phrase "In God We Trust," a motto rooted in Civil War-era legislation and reaffirmed in the 1950s as a declaration of national faith, while the date 1979 appears beneath the portrait, and the mint mark D, for the Denver Mint, is located just to the right of the ribbon in Washington's hair. The reverse continues Flanagan familiar heraldic eagle design used on Washington quarters from 1932 through 1998, showing an eagle with outstretched wings perched upon a bundle of arrows to signify strength and readiness to defend the nation, with olive branches beneath the arrows to represent peace. Above the eagle is the traditional motto E pluribus unum, Latin for out of many, one. A phrase used on U.S. coins since the late 18th century to express the unity of the states forming a single nation. The year 1979 falls within a time of significant inflation, economic fluctuation, and a rising demand for coinage and commerce, prompting the Denver Mint to produce an enormous number of quarters, over 489 million 1979 D specimens, which makes most examples very common today in circulated condition. Because so many were minted and entered heavy use, circulated coins typically show where on Washington's cheek, jawline, and hair details, while on the reverse the eagle's breast feathers and leg details often become flattened from circulation. Collectors therefore pay special attention to uncirculated, mint state examples, where luster quality, strike sharpness, and surface contact marks determine grade. The sharpest Denver Mint quarters display strong cartwheel luster, clear hair curls on Washington, and crisp feather definition on the eagle. Although the 1979 D quarter has no official silver version and no major nationally recognized die varieties, minor varieties such as die cracks, small die chips, light repunched mint marks, or slightly rotated dies can be of interest to variety specialists, but none drastically change the coin's overall rarity or value. In the broader context of U.S. coinage history, the 1979 D quarter represents a mature stage of the clad era, demonstrating the mint's ability to meet commercial demand with high-speed production while still holding to traditional American iconography that had been in place for nearly 5 decades. The coin's mottos and imagery serve to reinforce long-standing national themes, liberty representing the founding principle of the United States, "In God We Trust" symbolizing the nation's historical reliance on divine guidance, E pluribus unum emphasizing unity, the eagle and arrows signifying strength, and the olive branches balancing that strength with peace, while the coin itself continues to circulate today. A durable artifact connecting everyday commerce with a rich, complex numismatic legacy, stretching back to the earliest years of the American Republic. Next top. The 1984 The United States of America Washington quarter dollar is a copper-nickel-clad circulation coin minted at the Denver Mint during a period when Washington quarters were still using the long-running John Flanagan portrait first introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, and on the obverse of the 1984 D quarter. The design features Washington facing left with sharp facial details when well struck, the word Liberty prominently arched across the top rim. The motto, "In God We Trust," placed just to the left of Washington's neck, and the date, 1984, below the bust, accompanied by the D mint mark to the right of the ribbon in Washington's hair, which confirms that the coin was produced in Denver. On the reverse, Flanagan heraldic eagle design appears, showing a detailed eagle with wings fully spread, perched on a bundle of arrows symbolizing military readiness, with 2 olive branches beneath representing peace, and above the eagle is the inscription United States of America, followed by the national motto, e pluribus unum, while the denomination quarter dollar anchors the lower rim, and like all quarters struck between 1965 and 1998, the 1984 D quarter is composed of a copper-nickel-clad alloy consisting of outer layers of cupronickel, 75% copper and 25% nickel, bonded to a pure copper core, giving the coin its characteristic silvery surface and reddish edge stripe, with a standard weight of 5.67 grams, a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, and a reeded edge typically containing around 119 reeds. The Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of 1984 D quarters, making it a very common coin in everyday circulation, though uncirculated examples with pristine surfaces can be harder to find due to the high-speed industrial minting process of the 1980s, during which planchets were fed rapidly, and finished coins often accumulated numerous bag marks, scuffs, and abrasions before leaving the mint, so collectors value coins that show strong strikes with crisp feather details, clean fields, and little evidence of wear. Although the coin is common, the 1984 D issue still has interest to specialists because this era of the series includes known mint errors and die varieties, such as off-center strikes, broad strikes without the retaining collar, double-struck pieces, die cracks across the letters or eagle's wings, clipped planchets, and the occasional die break forming a cud along the rim, and while minor die chips add only small premium value, dramatic errors, especially major off-centers, 15% or more, full brockages, high-grade double strikes, or large retained cuds, can be worth much more depending on severity, eye appeal, and completeness of design. The 1984 D quarter can also exhibit examples of machine doubling on the date or lettering, though this form of doubling is flat and shelf-like and does not command strong collector premiums compared to true double die varieties, and unlike silver quarters from earlier decades, the 1984 D quarter contains no silver and should not show a pure white, silver ring inside the edge. If such an appearance is seen, it is usually the result of wear, cleaning, environmental exposure, or plating by a private company, not a mint error. In terms of value, a typical circulated 1984 D quarter found in pocket change is worth its face value of 25 cents, but nice uncirculated pieces can be worth about $1 to $5 depending on luster and the absence of contact marks, while high-grade examples certified in mint state 66 or 67 can command significantly higher prices due to population scarcity, with MS 67 examples bringing premium interest because only a small fraction of 1984 D quarters were preserved well enough to achieve such grades, and the coin serves as a strong representation of mid-1980s U.S. coinage during a time of rising production numbers. The 1983 United States quarter dollar, part of the classic Washington quarter series introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, is a copper-nickel-clad circulation coin struck at the Philadelphia Mint, identified by the P mint mark placed to the right of Washington's ponytail on the obverse, where John Flanagan portrait of George Washington dominates the design, accompanied by the inscriptions Liberty above, the motto, In God We Trust, at the left, and the date 1983 below. On the reverse appears Flanagan's long-used heraldic eagle, standing with wings outspread on a bundle of arrows with an olive branch beneath, all beneath the national motto, E pluribus unum, surrounded by the inscriptions United States of America and quarter dollar. Like other quarters of its era, the coin is made from a copper core clad with an alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel, weighs 5.67 grams, measures 24.26 millimeters, and has a reeded edge, but 1983 is especially significant to collectors because it was a year in which the U.S. Mint did not issue official mint sets or uncirculated sets, meaning that the vast majority of high-grade 1983 P quarters were released directly into circulation, where they quickly accumulated heavy wear, nicks, and loss of luster. This absence of mint sets has made true mint state survivors, especially those with sharp strikes and clean fields, surprisingly scarce for a modern-clad coin, although hundreds of millions were struck. High-end examples graded MS 65, MS 66, or higher can command notable premiums in the collector market because they are harder to find than typical modern Washington quarters from surrounding decades, and this rarity and high grade makes the 1983 P one of the more desirable non-silver circulation strikes of the 1980s. In circulated condition, it remains a common coin worth face value, but specimens that have been carefully preserved possess strong cartwheel luster or display fully struck eagle. Feathers and detailed hair curls on Washington can attract significant collector interest, particularly among Washington Quarter Series enthusiasts and registry set competitors. The year 1983 also produced several interesting era varieties, including off-center strikes, broad strikes, die cracks, and the occasional misaligned die, any of which can add numismatic value, depending on severity and eye appeal. Historically, the 1983 P quarter represents a moment when the U.S. Mint, still adapting to the economic conditions of the late 1970s and early 1980s, was producing huge quantities of clad coinage to meet circulating demand, and its lack of mint sets has unintentionally turned what would have been a routine issue into a modern conditional rarity, making the 1983 P quarter a fascinating example of how minting decisions, distribution practices, and collector interest intersect to transform an everyday piece of pocket change into a noteworthy collectible, all while carrying the enduring American ideals expressed through its inscriptions, Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and E Pluribus Unum, that have defined the Washington Quarter for generations. Next top. The 1984 The United States of America Washington Quarter Dollar is a copper-nickel-clad circulation coin minted at the Denver Mint during a period when Washington quarters were still using the long-running John Flanagan portrait first introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, and on the obverse of the 1984 D quarter. The design features Washington facing left with sharp facial details when well struck, the word Liberty prominently arched across the top rim. The motto, In God We Trust, placed just to the left of Washington's neck, and the date, 1984, below the bust, accompanied by the D mint mark to the right of the ribbon in Washington's hair, which confirms that the coin was produced in Denver. On the reverse, Flanagan heraldic eagle design appears, showing a detailed eagle with wings fully spread, perched on a bundle of arrows symbolizing military readiness, with two olive branches beneath representing peace, and above the eagle is the inscription United States of America, followed by the national motto, E Pluribus Unum, while the denomination quarter dollar anchors the lower rim, and like all quarters struck between 1965 and 1998, the 1984 D quarter is composed of a copper-nickel-clad alloy consisting of outer layers of cupronickel, 75% copper and 25% nickel, bonded to a pure copper core, giving the coin its characteristic silvery surface and reddish edge stripe, with a standard weight of 5.67 grams, a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, and a reeded edge typically containing around 119 reeds. The Denver Mint produced hundreds of millions of 1984 D quarters, making it a very common coin in everyday circulation, though uncirculated examples with pristine surfaces can be harder to find due to the high-speed industrial minting process of the 1980s, during which planchets were fed rapidly, and finished coins often accumulated numerous bag marks, scuffs, and abrasions before leaving the mint. So collectors value coins that show strong strikes with crisp feather details, clean fields, and little evidence of wear. Although the coin is common, the 1984 D issue still has interest to specialists because this era of the series includes known mint errors and die varieties, such as off-center strikes, broad strikes without the retaining collar, double-struck pieces, die cracks across the letters or eagle's wings, clipped planchets, and the occasional die break forming a cud along the rim. And while minor die chips add only small premium value, dramatic errors, especially major off-centers, 15% or more, full brockages, high-grade double strikes, or large retained cuts, can be worth much more depending on severity, eye appeal, and completeness of design. The 1984 D quarter can also exhibit examples of machine doubling on the date or lettering, though this form of doubling is flat and shelf-like and does not command strong collector premiums compared to true double die varieties, and unlike silver quarters from earlier decades, the 1984 D quarter contains no silver and should not show a pure white, silver ring inside the edge. If such an appearance is seen, it is usually the result of wear, cleaning, environmental exposure, or plating by a private company, not a mint error. In terms of value, a typical circulated 1984 D quarter found in pocket change is worth its face value of 25 cents, but nice uncirculated pieces can be worth about $1 to $5 depending on luster and the absence of contact marks. While high-grade examples certified in mint state 66 or 67 can command significantly higher prices due to population scarcity, with MS 67 examples bringing premium interest because only a small fraction of 1984 D quarters were preserved well enough to achieve such grades. And the coin serves as a strong representation of mid-1980s U.S. coinage during a time of rising production numbers, technological refinements in minting machinery, and continued use of classic designs prior to the major shift. In the Washington Quarter series brought on by the 1999 to 2008 State Quarters program, therefore, the 1984 D Washington Quarter remains a common, affordable, historically interesting example of America's circulating currency, offering collectors opportunities to study die state progression, clad coin wear patterns, mint error phenomena, and grade rarity even within an otherwise plentiful date, making it a worthwhile coin for beginners and seasoned numismatists alike. Next top. The 1985 D Washington Quarter Dollar is a circulating coin struck by the United States Mint at the Denver Mint facility, identified by the D Mint mark located to the right of George Washington's ponytail on the obverse. Like all Washington quarters minted from 1965 to 1998, the 1985 D quarter is composed of a copper-nickel-clad alloy, a pure copper core sandwiched between outer layers of cupronickel, rather than the 90% silver composition used in quarters before 1965. The coin weighs 5.67 grams, has a diameter of 24.26 millimeters, a thickness of 1.75 millimeters, and features a reeded edge consisting of 119 grooves. The obverse design, created by sculptor John Flanagan in 1932, portrays the left-facing bust of George Washington, the first U.S. president. This side also includes the inscriptions Liberty above Washington's head and In God We Trust to the left, both of which are long-standing mottos of U.S. coinage. Liberty signifying the nation's founding ideals, and In God We Trust serving as the national motto formally adopted in 1956 but seen on coins earlier. The date 1985 is found below the portrait, indicating its year of issue. The Denver Mint struck a very large mintage, producing over 519 million 1985 D quarters, making it a common business strike, coin still widely found in circulation today. The reverse of the coin continues Flanagan original design, featuring a heraldic bald eagle with outstretched wings perched upon a bundle of arrows and framed by olive branches, symbolizing America's readiness for defense balanced with its desire for peace. Above the eagle is the inscription, United States of America, and directly beneath it is E pluribus unum, a Latin phrase meaning out of many one, representing the unity of the states forming a single nation. Beneath the eagle is the denomination quarter dollar. Collectors generally view the 1985 D quarter as a circulation issue coin with modest collectible value unless it is found in exceptionally high grade. Heavily circulated examples are worth only face value, while coins preserved in mint state MS 65, MS 66, MS 67 or higher can be worth more due to the difficulty of finding older clad quarters with strong luster, clean surfaces, and few marks. A perfect or near-perfect 1985 D can be surprisingly valuable because clad coins of this era were mass-produced and handled roughly, causing most to show heavy wear. Error varieties such as off-center strikes, die cracks, double dies, clipped planchets, or struck through debris are possible but must be authenticated and can increase value depending on rarity and visual impact. The coin also holds interest for historical reasons. It was minted during the long-running Washington quarter design era that spanned from 1932 to 1998, before the 50-state quarters program began in 1999 and transformed the series into one of the most widely collected in modern history. Although the 1985 D quarter itself is not rare. Its design links it to the legacy of U.S. numismatics, representing a transition period between traditional U.S. coin iconography and the later explosion of commemorative state, national park, and America the Beautiful quarters. Many collectors keep specimens of 1980s Washington quarters and albums to illustrate the development of circulation strikes, mint quality, die wear, and shifts in U.S. mint production methods. Overall, the 1985 D Washington quarter dollar is a common but historically meaningful piece of American coinage, carrying the nation's symbols, liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and E Pluribus Unum, along with the familiar portrait of George Washington, making it an accessible and interesting collectible for beginning and advanced numismatists alike. Next up. The 1986 P United States quarter dollar, commonly called the 1986 P Washington quarter, is a copper-nickel-clad circulation coin struck by the Philadelphia Mint, identified by the P mint mark located on the obverse to the right of George Washington's ponytail, continuing the mint's use of the P mint mark on quarters that began only a few years earlier in 1980. Like all Washington quarters minted between 1965 and 1998, the 1986 P is composed of a clad alloy consisting of a pure copper core with outer layers made of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving it the familiar silver-gray appearance, without containing any actual silver. This quarter weighs 5.67 grams, measures 24.26 millimeters in diameter, has a thickness of about 1.75 millimeters, and features a distinctive reeded edge of 119 reeds, a security measure originally intended to deter coin clipping. The obverse design, created by sculptor John Flanagan in 1932, displays a left-facing bust of George Washington, the first president of the United States, chosen to commemorate the 200th anniversary of his birth. Above the portrait is the bold inscription Liberty, symbolizing the foundational American ideal, and to the left side of Washington's neck appears the national motto, In God We Trust, which had become a consistent feature across U.S. coinage and reflects the nation's historical and cultural values. Beneath the bust sits the date 1986, placing the coin in the late Cold War era of American history, at a time when clad quarters were widely circulating with little attention from the public, yet later became a point of numismatic interest for collectors of modern U.S. currency. The Philadelphia Mint produced an extremely large mintage, over 551 million coins, making the 1986 P quarter a common circulating issue still frequently found in pocket change today. On the reverse of the coin, also designed by Flanagan, is a powerful depiction of a bald eagle with wings spread, perched on a bundle of arrows representing strength and preparedness for defense, while an olive branch below symbolizes the nation's desire for peace. Arched across the top is United States of America, and directly beneath it appears the motto, E Pluribus Unum, Latin for out of many one, emphasizing the unity formed by the states and the diverse peoples who make up the country. At the bottom is the denomination quarter dollar. Although the 1986 P quarter is extremely common in circulated grades, its numismatic interest increases significantly in mint state condition, particularly in grades such as MS 65, MS 66, and MS 67, because Philadelphia minted clad quarters from the mid-1980s often show weak strikes, dull luster, or surface contact marks from high-speed production. Finding a sharply struck, brilliant, and nearly flawless 1986 P quarter is far more difficult than its huge mintage suggests. Coins with crisp details in Washington's hair, a strong eagle design on the reverse, and minimal abrasions can be considerably more desirable to collectors. As with most modern coins, error varieties also exist and can add significant collector value. These errors may include off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, die cracks, cut breaks, struck through grease marks, die clashes, and double die obverse or reverse varieties, though each error must be evaluated on its individual rarity and visual impact. While not historically scarce, the 1986 P quarter serves as a representative example of the transitional years before the explosion of the 50-state quarters program in 1999, which dramatically increased public interest in American coin collecting. Many collectors include the 1986 P quarter in albums of the pre-state quarter era to show how everyday Washington quarters looked before modern commemorative designs dominated U.S. coinage. Despite its ordinary appearance to most people, the coin carries the hallmarks of American iconography, liberty, Indiana God We Trust, e pluribus unum, and represents a snapshot of U.S. minting technology, economic life, and national symbolism during the mid-1980s. Its beauty lies not in rarity, but in its role as a durable, widely circulating symbol of the United States, connecting millions of hands and decades of history through one simple quarter dollar. Next top. The 1987 P. Washington Quarter, struck at the Philadelphia Mint, is part of the long-running Washington Quarter series first introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, and by 1987 the design had become a familiar part of American coinage. On the obverse, the quarter features the profile of George Washington, designed by sculptor John Flanagan, with the inscriptions Liberty prominently above Washington's head and In God We Trust placed to the left of his profile. Beneath the portrait sits the date 1987, and because it was struck in Philadelphia, the coin carries a small P mint mark on the obverse just to the right of Washington's ponytail. The reverse of the coin still uses Flanagan original eagle design, an American bald eagle with wings outstretched, perched atop a bundle of arrows symbolizing strength and readiness, with olive branches beneath representing peace. Across the top rim appears the nation's traditional motto, E pluribus unum, out of many one, with United States of America above and quarter dollar below. By 1987, the quarter had long since transitioned from its original 90% silver composition to the modern copper-nickel-clad structure introduced in 1965, consisting of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, giving the coin its characteristic silvery color, yet making it far less valuable in melt value compared to silver issues. The Philadelphia Mint struck approximately 655,594,000 examples of the 1987 P quarter, a very large mintage that makes the coin common today in circulated grades. Because of this, most examples found in pocket change carry only face value unless they remain in unusually high levels of preservation. Coins graded in mint state, especially MS 65 or higher, can be worth more to collectors because they must exhibit sharp details, strong mint luster, and virtually no contact marks, something harder to find given how widely these coins circulated. Collectors often examine details such as the clarity of Washington's hair, the sharpness of the eagle's feathers, the strength of the lettering, and whether the surface has the original mint cartwheel luster. Though not considered rare, the 1987 P quarter is still of interest because it falls within a transitional period of the Washington series before the state quarter's redesign in 1999, meaning it represents the traditional imagery that many Americans grew up with. Some collectors search for minor varieties, strike errors, off-center strikes, double dies, and planchet abnormalities, which, while not common, can add value if authenticated. A pristine, uncirculated 1987 P quarter taken directly from a mint set and kept in protective storage can remain sharply detailed and is more desirable than a circulated example that has spent decades in commerce, accumulating scratches, wear, and loss of definition. Despite its high mintage, the coin serves as a small but interesting artifact of U.S. monetary history, reflecting the durability of Flanagan design and the enduring national symbols of trust, liberty, unity, and American identity represented by inscriptions like In God We Trust, Liberty, and E pluribus unum. Because of its accessibility and modest value, the 1987 P quarter is often an entry point for new coin collectors who appreciate both the history and the aesthetic of classic American circulating coinage. Next top. The 1989 P. Washington Quarter, produced at the Philadelphia Mint, belongs to the long-established Washington Quarter series first issued in 1932, created to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, and over the decades the design became one of the most widely recognized images in U.S. coinage. On the obverse of the 1989 P quarter appears the familiar left-facing portrait of George Washington, adapted from Jean-Antoine Houdon's sculpture and engraved by John Flanagan, with the word Liberty arching prominently across the top edge of the coin. To the left of Washington's profile sits the motto, "In God We Trust," a constant reminder of America's historical belief structures and a standard inscription on modern U.S. coinage. Beneath the portrait is the date 1989, and the P mint mark, representing the Philadelphia Mint, appears just to the right of Washington's ponytail. Flanagan design emphasizes Washington's strong features, especially the hair and jawline, and the 1989 strikes typically show decent detail, although circulation, where can quickly soften the portrait. Turning to the reverse, the quarter displays the classic American bald eagle, wings spread in a powerful but balanced stance, perched atop a bundle of arrows that symbolize national strength, defense, and readiness to protect the country. Beneath the eagle rests an olive branch, symbolizing peace, a reminder of America's ongoing pursuit of stability and diplomacy in contrast to the strength represented by the arrows. Above the eagle appears the Latin motto, E pluribus unum, meaning, out of many, one, a phrase central to America's identity as a nation built from diverse states and people. Encircling the design are the inscriptions, United States of America at the top edge and $quarter at the bottom, marking the issuing nation and the denomination. By 1989, all U.S. circulating quarters had long been made in copper-nickel-clad composition, introduced in 1965 to replace the earlier 90% silver format. This clad structure consists of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core, giving the coin its bright silver-colored appearance, but no intrinsic precious metal value. The Philadelphia Mint struck approximately 512 million 1989 P quarters, a very high mintage, meaning that while the coin is common in circulated condition, well-preserved and uncirculated examples are more collectible. In pocket-worn condition, most 1989 P quarters remain worth only face value, as their abundance and the lack of silver content limit their monetary premium. However, truly mint state MS examples, especially those graded MS 65, MS 66, or above, become much more desirable to collectors because they must show clean surfaces, sharp design details, and strong luster without the scratches, dings, and where that come from years of circulation. Collectors examine key features such as the clarity of Washington's hair strands, the crispness of the eagle's feathers, the quality of the lettering, and the absence of contact marks or staining. The 1989 P is also of interest within the broader timeline of the Washington Quarter series because it was minted just a decade before the enormous transformation of the design program in 1999 with the release of the state quarters, making coins like the 1989 P part of the final era of the classic, unaltered Flanagan design that circulated for over 60 years. Although not rare, the 1989 P quarter occasionally appears with mint errors such as off-center strikes, clipped planchets, weak strikes, die cracks, or die doubling, and such errors, when significant and authenticated, can add substantial value beyond the normal market price. Uncirculated specimens taken from original mint sets or preserved since the year of issue tend to show the brightest luster and the strongest details, making them the most desirable for dedicated collectors of the series. With its historic imagery, traditional inscriptions, "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and "E pluribus unum," and connection to the long lineage of Washington quarters, the 1989 P quarter remains an accessible yet meaningful artifact of U.S. coinage, representing both everyday American commerce and the enduring legacy of one of the nation's most iconic coin designs. Next top. The 1992 P United States quarter dollar, part of the long-running Washington Quarter series first issued in 1932, represents a modern copper-nickel-clad circulation coin struck at the Philadelphia Mint, identified by the P mint mark placed to the right of George Washington's ponytail on the obverse. This year's coin continues the standard design that had been used since the bicentennial redesign reverted in 1977, featuring John Flanagan portrait of George Washington, the word Liberty above his head, the national motto, "In God We Trust," to the left of the profile, and the date 1992 at the bottom, while the reverse displays the classic heraldic eagle, also designed by Flanagan, standing with wings outstretched, perched on a bundle of arrows with an olive branch below, surrounded above by the foundational motto, E pluribus unum, and encircled by United States of America and quarter dollar. The 1992 P quarter is composed of a copper core clad with 75% copper and 25% nickel. Weighing 5.67 grams, measuring 24.26 millimeters in diameter, with a reeded edge, and was mass-produced for commerce with a mintage exceeding 500 million pieces, making it a common issue in average circulated condition. However, numismatically, collectors sometimes pursue examples with unusually sharp strikes, brilliant mint luster, or exceptional preservation, especially mint state, MS grades of MS, 66 and above, where even modern coins can become scarce because the Philadelphia Mint of the early 1990s did not always produce perfectly struck clad coins, though most circulated 1992 P quarters are worth only face value. Coins with dramatic errors, such as off-centers, double strikes, partial colors, or wrong planchet strikes, can command significant premiums, and some extremely well-preserved. High-grade specimens certified by respected grading companies like PCGS or NGC may also be sought after by registry collectors. Historically, the 1992 issue sits near the end of the traditional Eagle reverse era because just a few years later, in 1999, the U.S. Mint completely replaced the long-standing Eagle design with a 50-state quarters program, beginning a new era of circulating commemoratives, making the 1992 series part of the last generation of Washington quarters struck before the dramatic changes of the late 1990s. Ultimately, the 1992 P quarter is valued today not for rarity, but for its place in the evolution of American coinage, its representation of the mint's clad coin. Production practices of the period, the patriotic symbols inscribed across its surfaces, Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and E pluribus unum, and its role as a widely accessible collectible for beginners and experienced numismatists alike.